So your colleagues, I think it passed, right?
Oh, yeah, it passed with flying colors, but at least a few people woke up to this. I mean,
but the members of Congress who, go to church on Sunday, who've just voted to ban the New Testament on campus, make it illegal to quote from the New Testament, the Christian Bible, how did they square that?
I think their voters let them get away with it. I mean, they don't have to square it unless they're...
But why would they want to do something like that?
Because there's a lot of pressure in Congress to vote for these things. And our Republican leadership thinks they're so smart. We're in an election year and they want to bring up issues. They want to put them in front of Congress and make us vote on them, whether they're going anywhere in the Senate or not. And they want to split the Democrats. They want to show that Republicans are united and then split the Democrats. That's one of the reasons they do it. Another reason they do it is there's a foreign interest group called AIPAC that's, got the ear of this current speaker and demanded 16 votes in April on Israel or the Middle East. We haven't had 16 votes in April on the United States in Congress.
So what's AIPAC?
AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And they didn't start out as a PAC in the sense of a political action committee, but now they have a political action committee. Ostensibly, it's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel. And they're a very effective lobbying group. They get in there. They try to get me to write a white paper as a candidate, for instance, for Congress. They almost get
on what?
On Israel. And I wouldn't do it. And they said, why? And I'm like, I don't do homework for lobbyists, right? I'm like, I didn't like writing term papers at college. I'm not writing one for you.
What did they say?
They said, oh, well, here, just copy Rand Paul's term paper and put your name on it. We'll accept that. And I'm like, no, I'm still not cribbing somebody else's homework to do homework. I'm not turning in my homework for you. And what... You're laughing, but you know what? I bet I may be the only Republican in Congress who hasn't done homework for AIPAC. And it's just what it is. It's conditioning. They want you to do something very simple and benign, and for them, they don't really grade your term paper. They just want to know that you'll do something for them. And if you'll do something for them as a candidate, you're more likely to do something for them as a congressman when you get in there. So my rift started out in 2012 when I refused to turn in an Israel term paper.
And how did they respond to that?
Well, they kind of got in my race a little too late there in the beginning, and because it was hard to tell that I was actually going to win. And when they saw I was going to win, that's when they tried to get me to do the term paper. They didn't have a political action committee at the time. They couldn't spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars against me at that time. It was just sort of like a whisper campaign to try to, hey, don't vote for him, blah, blah, blah.
That's why.
Because at that point, they sensed I wouldn't do what they wanted when I got
But what did
Congress.
they whisper against you? What were they saying about you?
Well, they would do it through, for instance, churches, evangelical churches. They've got an organization called Christians United for Israel, where they sort of co-opted evangelicals. People think it's a grassroots movement in Kentucky. It's actually a top-down movement from AIPAC, so that people who aren't even Jewish will feel like they've got to support Israel, no matter what. And even if it's a secular state that funds abortions, they, just sort of forget that part, and we've got to fund Israel. So they have networks. So it's more than just about the money.
So you get elected, despite their efforts. And then what happens? Do you talk to them after that?
And by the way, let me just put a little footnote here. I'm not against Israel. I've never voted to sanction Israel. I've never said anything particularly, critical of Israel, other than, for instance, right now they're bombing. They've killed 1% of the civilian population in Gaza. That's concerning to me. But so what do they do now?
You get elected 2012. Do you hear from them again?
I vote my conscience, which they won't tolerate. So they ran with their 501c4 before they had a super PAC. They were running educational advocacy ads against me, saying that I'm bad on Israel. They didn't say don't vote for him. They just said he's a bad guy. And so I said, all right, well, you're not welcome in my office anymore, because for years I invited them into my office. Let's talk this through. Let me explain to you. I'm a libertarian leaning Republican. I don't vote for foreign aid for anybody. So don't be offended when I don't vote for your foreign aid. I don't vote for wars anywhere. So don't be offended if I do that. I'm for free speech, even if it's abhorrent. And, we used to talk, but now they're banned from my office. The situation went from bad to worse. This election cycle, they spent $400,000 against me, $90,000 last fall running TV ads in my district and Facebook ads and whatnot, trying to equate me with the squad. And then this most recently, and in fact, as I'm speaking to you today, even though my election is over, they're still running hundreds of thousands of dollars of negative ads.
It's a little weird, though, because as you said, you're probably the only Republican in the House who hasn't done homework for them, who isn't on their side. And that's okay. I mean, you can have, you're a libertarian-oriented Republican from Northern Kentucky. You're probably not going to single-handedly determine our foreign policy. So I think you should, but you don't.
Thank you.
And you're not going to. So why do they care? Why not just let Thomas Massie be Thomas Massie in Northern Kentucky? Like, why the need to crush you?
I don't know. I think they don't want one horse out of the barn. If one person starts speaking the truth, they're afraid it could be contagious, perhaps. Or it's like a new car. They go to Mike Johnson and they say, we want a Cadillac, Escalade with pearl white paint. And here's the rims we want. And Mike Johnson puts that bill on the floor. It passes with a unanimous vote, except for one guy votes no. And I think they feel like it's a scratch on their car. They wanted a brand new car and it got scratched by this guy named Massie. They were going to drive it over to the Senate and ask for unanimous consent. But now the senators are saying, wait, why this wasn't unanimous in the House? Why should we do it unanimously in the Senate? And it starts raising questions. And I think that's why they get mad.
What I find interesting is that it's not just that they disagree with your views, which they do, and I think they have an absolute right to disagree with anybody's views. We all do. But they've called you a bigot, and they call you an anti-Semite, and say you're a hater and try to destroy your character. That seems like a very different level of response to me.
Right. There's no need to do that. I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't have an anti-Semitic hair in my head. Okay. I don't like AIPAC anymore. Like I used to be neutral toward AIPAC, right? But I have no antagonistic feelings toward Jewish people. I am the last thing. I think I'm probably the least xenophobic person in Congress. I mean, these are the guys that my colleagues want to sanction everybody, declare them terrorist states, come up with these strongly worded resolutions. I don't vote for any of that crap, right? Unless somebody does harm to me, I'm not going to call them anything. So I get called names just for staying out of all of this political posturing.
That's disgusting, though, isn't it?
I guess
attack your character. They can disagree with your views,
right.
but to call you like the worst thing you can be in America, like that's disgusting.
I have a thick skin.
Apparently.
And here's the good news, Tucker. My constituents aren't falling for it. 2 weeks ago, I just had a primary and got 76% of the vote, with AIPAC running hundreds of thousands of dollars of ads. So it's not working against me. I think it's short-sighted on their side to do this. They're just burning money, but they're trying to make an example of me.
But they're also exposing their weakness.
I think they are. I think they've exposed a real weakness here. And, it used to be just me voting against some of these resolutions, but recently where they tried to ban passages in the New Testament, I think we got like almost 24 Republicans who said, wait, hold on there.
Wait, can I ask a question, though? There's a fundamental question. So the Biden administration has put a bunch of people in jail for violating something called FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, 1936-ish. It's been on the books for, 90 years. And it's never been enforced ever until recently, until really the Trump era and Biden era. So, but the law requires people who lobby on behalf of foreign governments to register. It's that simple. And this is the largest lobby most effective lobby in the United States on behalf of a foreign government. Are they registered with FARA?
They're not, but they should be.
Well, how can that be? How can they put Paul Manafort in jail, which they did, on a FARA violation, and a bunch of other people in jail on FARA violations, but the largest and most effective and most feared foreign lobby working for a foreign government doesn't have to register under the law. That's insane.
Oh man, don't make me take their side, but I'll explain as best as I can what they're arguing.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should take their side. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to agree with you in a second, but let me at least offer what I think is their argument. They would say we are Americans. The members of AIPAC are Americans, and that they have the right to free speech.
Paul Manafort's an American.
Right. Yeah. So there's the good rebuttal is FARA applies not to foreigners, to foreign agents, right? Of foreign principles, agents of foreign principles.
It's Americans lobbying on behalf of foreign governments.
Correct. So AIPAC is exactly what FARA is meant for. Now they would say, and we have a First Amendment right. Okay, well, I agree with you there, but we also have election laws. And it's disclosure, right? FARA doesn't say you can't say Thomas Massey's, an ignorant hillbilly. You're allowed to say that if you want to, but we just want to check where your money's coming from. Tell us where it's coming from, what you're spending it on, and if you are lobbying on behalf of a foreign country. So they should be, now to your point, they should be registered with FARA. This is what FARA is where there's gray area, where it's an American representing a foreign country. Yes. Let's look and see if you're getting any money from that foreign country. Are you a dual citizen with that foreign country? Are you being directed by, for instance, is Netanyahu speaking to your group, advising you on your next move? Are you getting money from the military industrial complex? Because to understand AIPAC, I think it's easiest to model them as a military industrial lobby. Their biggest thing is they want more equipment, more military equipment from the United States going to Israel. In fact, when they used to be allowed in my office, the argument they would make is, oh, we're just stimulating the U.S. military industrial complex because every single penny of the 3.8 billion that they nominally get, now they're getting way more than that, but that Israel nominally gets goes to U.S. military contractors. Now that didn't make me warm and fuzzy, okay? But that is their argument. And if you notice what they advocate for, I think sometimes they advocate for things that even Israelis wouldn't advocate for.
Oh, I believe that.
They would, I think, be okay with a war with Iran, like an all-out, apocalyptic war with Iran. Whereas there are people in Israel say, "Whoa, hold on a second, we'd rather not have a war with Iran." But AIPAC does things that lead us in that direction, and so they're kind of like what the NRA is to gun owners, AIPAC is to Israel, or what the Farm Bureau is to farmers, AIPAC is to Israel. In other words,
represents a faction.
Right. They represent a faction, but usually a corporate faction that, and they're using the imprimatur of grassroots that they've diluted or confused into bullying congressmen. And the NRA does that, and Farm Bureau does that. I'm picking on some, other right-wing groups here.
Well, for sure. And by the way, I think there are probably a lot of things that AIPAC is for that I'm for, and Farm Bureau, NRA, same thing. But
right.
The idea of a foreign government playing in our political campaigns openly in that they're showing you they're doing it, but opaquely in that you can't track it because they're not registered. Is there any other Republican who has your views on this?
Well, I have Republicans who come to me on the floor and say, I wish I could vote with you today. Yours is the right vote, but I would just take too much flack back home. And I have Republicans who come to me and say, that's wrong what AIPAC is doing to you. Let me talk to my AIPAC person. By the way, everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
I don't know how it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch with them, and they've got your cell number, and you have conversations with them. So I've had
that's absolutely crazy.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my AIPAC person And it's literally what we call them, my AIPAC guy. I'll talk to my AIPAC guy and see if I can get him to, dial those ads back.
Why have I never heard this before?
It doesn't benefit anybody. Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country? It doesn't benefit the congressman for people to know that, so they're not going to tell you that.
Have you seen any other country do anything like this? Like
No.
Russia obviously determines the outcome of our elections. We keep hearing that. Does anyone have a Putin guy that they talk to?
Not only do they not have a Putin guy, look, they don't have a Britain guy. They don't have an Australian guy. They don't have a Germany dude. Like, it's the only country that does this, that has somebody that, like, uniformly, I guarantee there's some spreadsheet at AIPAC where the AIPAC dude who's matched up with the congressman is there, and then all the congressman's votes on the issue. Oh, has the congressman been to Israel? They pay for trips for congressmen and their spouses to go to Israel. I'm not the only Republican who hasn't taken the AIPAC trip to Israel, but I'm probably one of a dozen that hasn't taken that trip, and the other ones just haven't got around to it.
What's the trip like? Do you know?
It's kind of like, I think, vacation-y. You go see the wall, you go see the sites, things like that.
It's such a great, I must say, it's such a great country. Jerusalem especially. It's just such a wonderful place that's got to have a big effect.
You go, like, swim in the Dead Sea.
Yeah,
like,
I've done that.
Yeah.
Not on an AIPAC trip, but
Right.
I would recommend it to anyone.
Are you sure it wasn't an AIPAC trip?
It was. I paid for it myself. No, I mean, it's just funny. I mean, I am a legit lover of Israel, of the place Israel.
Right.
I like the people, and I love the food, and like the whole thing is so great.
Look,
But that's distinct from the government of Israel, which is just a foreign government.
my sense is the people are very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Totally. They're publicly minded. They care about their country. That they're generally good people, right?
That's certainly been my experience in trips there, for sure. It's great. It's just I think it's probably one of my favorite, maybe my all-time favorite place to go with my family. But that's just a completely different thing from taking orders from its government.
Right.
I mean, right?
Now, they'll say these are American citizens who are, coordinating all of
This is almost a rhetorical question, but in your, whatever, 12, 14 years in Congress, 12 years, have you ever seen any indication that Russia is influencing election outcomes or candidates or members?
Not in a quiet way. Like, they'll put out statements. Russia obviously has Russia Today, RT.
Yeah, I think it's been banned, but
yeah. I like Kentucky Fried Chicken, of which I'm a big fan, being from Kentucky, right? They realized that fried became sort of a pejorative, and people didn't want to eat fried food, so they changed the name to KFC, so you don't have to say fried. Okay, Russia Today changed their name to RT, so you don't have to say Russia. But there's a strong analogy there. But I mean, there are efforts. You'd be a fool to think that they're not trying to influence things here, just like we are there. We have Radio Free Europe and Voice of America.
Yes.
We have. I mean, we spend $1 billion, well over $1 billion, on the foreign propaganda that's out in the open that we know about, right? So there are foreigners spending money on propaganda over here as well. I don't want to say they're not involved, but people don't say, oh, I need to go talk to my Russia guy.
But you've never, like, in the cloakroom or on the floor or at dinner, you've never heard another Republican member say, I'd love to vote for this, but Putin doesn't want me to.
I have never heard that.
You haven't?
In my life.
Okay. What about China?
No, unless it's a spy sleeping with a Democrat, I'm sure there's some of that going on.
Yeah, but that's not in public. So how do you think, it's just interesting because you're clearly not a bigot. I think it's very obvious. And they've called you one, and they've spent millions of dollars against you over the years, and it has had no effect. You get reelected in the primary in the 70s. So, like, why are they still spending against you in your statewide? And can you just continue to serve in Congress while disobeying?
Well, they say that they don't want me to run statewide. They're worried that I'll run for McConnell's seat. And so they're trying to send me a message. That's what they would tell you.
But why?
I don't know what the message is. Maybe
it's a little presumptuous to decide yes to be.
I've never said that I'm running for the Senate, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty much disinterested in it, personally and publicly. But just in case, they're running ads statewide. Now, mind you, there are 6 congressional districts in Kentucky, and I only represent one of them. They're running the ads in all 6 congressional districts just in case.
Amazing. What do you think of Mitch McConnell after all these years of being in the delegation with him?
He's a shrewd guy.
Yep.
He's quick. He's let me give you an example of how quick he is. So we had a Congressman, Jamie Comer, who's now chair of the Oversight Committee. He got elected in a special election, which means you come in the middle of a term, and you have to boot up with no staff, and so it's kind of disorienting. So Mitch McConnell had an event for Jamie Comer on his first day in Congress. It was in a townhouse with like 200 lobbyists. By the way, I'm never going to get invited to one of these now that I tell you the story. And so Jamie's there, and McConnell goes, "I believe Jamie took his first vote tonight." And
that is such a perfect imitation.
And I wasn't supposed to speak, but I interrupted Senator McConnell, who was at the time the majority leader. And I said, "Yes, Senator McConnell, he did take his first vote, and I know he has no staff. So I advise Jamie, when you walk into the chamber, look at how I vote, and then vote the other way, and you'll be just fine." And 200 lobbyists thought it was a pretty good joke, and they were laughing. And as the laughter died down, McConnell goes, "Well, Thomas, I'm glad you and I are giving Jamie the same advice." And then the place the walls almost collapsed.
No, he's good. He's good
so
that
funny.
way.